Welcome back. We are pleased to be joined by Idaho Attorney General Lawrence Wasden. Attorney General, thanks so much for taking the time to stop in and talk with us today.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
And it's been a busy little stretch for you with a lot going on. So let's start with the multi-state lawsuit that the state of Idaho has filed against the Biden administration's vaccine mandate. First off, just tell us a little bit about what was some of the motivation behind the lawsuit.
Certainly. Well, the very first thing to note is that this is not about vaccines directly. It's not whether they're good, bad, ugly, ought to be doing, not ought to be doing. That's not what this lawsuit is about. It's about federal power and whether the federal government has the power to mandate vaccines in the way that they're attempting to do. The president issued 2 executive orders and made a directive to OSHA. The first executive order was to federal employees, saying that federal employees had to have vaccines. And like it or not, the president has the power to direct federal employees.
Right.
The second executive order, however, was to federal contractors. And there's some limitations we have there, but think of this for a moment. Each of our state universities are contractors with the federal government. And so how extensive is that power of the federal government to require those contractors to meet their requirements? And how does that affect then the state budget and state dollars and how we interact? Does that interact with or interfere with our sovereign power as a state? And that's really the nature of that lawsuit. Then there's a third lawsuit in which the president gave a directive to OSHA to prepare a rule requiring entities of 100 or greater, or businesses of 100 employees or greater, to require vaccine mandates or mandated vaccines. And in that instance, we've filed, along with a number of our other states, we filed that one in Georgia, and our purpose there is to say that the police power, that is the power to protect health, safety, welfare, and morals of the people, is a power reserved to the states under the 10th Amendment. And is the federal government overstepping the bounds of the 10th Amendment and that reservation of power to the state? It's incumbent upon us to protect the sovereign nature of the state. So again, what we're trying to argue here, what we're expressing is that power. How far can the federal government exert that power? And does it step into the arena of us as a state?
What's the status of the lawsuits right now? Where do we stand? What's next? And what's next?
What's next is right now they've just been filed, and so there's a period that we have some arguments that are going to be made, and there will be some discovery perhaps, and then there will be additional arguments that will be made. The case in Georgia is in the district court. The other case is in a federal appellate court because that's where it's supposed to be filed. And so that's sort of the next step is what's the other side going to say, how they're going to respond to the lawsuits.
Oh, and also in response to President Biden's mandate, the legislature is going to meet up in Boise next week, and there's been some reports and some concerns about maybe the legality of some of the things that they're going to pass. What does the law say as far as what are they allowed to do under the circumstances, and the laws they pass? What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's a big question. A lot of challenges, in part because of the process that the legislature has employed. And in part by whatever they're going to do, and the answer is we don't really know because we're kind of in uncharted waters here, and so we're just going to have to see, based upon what they do and what pieces of legislation they consider and how they do it. There's 2 houses that have to consider that, both the House and the Senate, and we just really don't know what the outcome's going to be. So I don't have a magic wand. I can't predict. Can't predict.
That. So if they do pass some laws next week against this mandate, and there's some lawsuits that get filed as a result, what does how does that affect the taxpayers, as far as the lawsuits and stuff?
Right.
Is that something that we have to pay for, or how does that work?
The answer is yes, you have to pay for them. And so there's a number of issues that arise with regard to that, and that is this session constitutionally valid based upon the way the House and the Senate, one recessed, the other went sine die. The Senate was a sine die. So that creates legal questions. And so that's a likely avenue of attack, in addition to the fact that depending on whatever piece of legislation might be passed, you just don't know what it will have in its, what it will say, and as a consequence, it may provide an opportunity for challenge as well. So again, we just have to kind of wait and see.
All right, and then you know, earlier in the broadcast we had this story with the inmates and the lawsuit facing. I think you have till November 22nd to respond. What are you thinking in terms of that? Or
And well, right now, what we will do is respond with an answer or motions that are appropriate. Really can't say a lot about that because it is a matter in litigation, so it's not really appropriate for me to say anything. Our job is to defend the state, and we'll do that.
all right, Idaho Attorney General Lawrence Wasden joining us live here on Local News 8 at noon. Thank you again so much for stopping by. Have a safe trip. Hope the roads were all right for you. How was the trip?
Well, it was okay. It's cold, and you get a little bit of freezing rain some places, and it's a little slick. But Dylan, thank you very much for allowing me to be with you.
Us Idaho boys can take it. All right, coming up next, Jeff Roper will have the weather. See what other kind of stuff we're going to have to deal with.